Yes. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. 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 Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Do you have the password?
Yes. Okay.
Hare Krishna, you're being really careful with the masks and everything. I can't wear a mask and talk at the same time.
Yeah, I understand. We want to protect you because you are.
Because what?
We want to protect you because from anything should not come from us.
Well, you're probably on the extra safe side. Is more likely we're going to give you a problem than you give us a problem. But I've been self-quarantined for a long time now. Most of the entire day, as you have probably also. Have you been hearing the last two classes, since we have 7 minutes before this is supposed to begin? The verses of Lord Chaitanya, Sikshastaka verses, do you know what that subject is?
Yeah, we heard. Chaitanya number.
You heard. Okay.
The second one, I can't remember, but I heard.
Okay. We didn't, I didn't go through the Sanskrit, we just kind of.
Knew what they would say about what we were.
Life is like a bride.
Yeah.
Nam Akari Bahudana Jasarva Shaktis, that's the Sanskrit.
Oh.
The second verse, Nam Akari Bahuda Krishna, you have so many names. Nija Sarva Shaktis, you've invested all of your potencies in each and every name. Namamakari Bahuda, Nija Sarva Shaktis, Tatrapita Niyama. There's no hard and fast rules about chanting. And you've made approach to you so easy through your holy name, but unfortunate as I am, Nanuraga, I don't have any attachment for you. Yahajani Nanuraga. Durdaivam. It's how unfortunate. Nanuraga, I don't have any attachment for your names. And then comes this one. So we're scheduled, as soon as he's done fiddling, I'm going to start. Just sing Jai Radha Madhava and then begin the. So this is an interesting place to hold the Sunday feast lecture in your living room. But that's what we're doing. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Baldava Girivara Jani Gopi Jana Baldava Girivara Gopi Jana Baldava Girivara Jasodanandana Prajujanandana Jasodanandana Prajujanandana Jamanatidavana Chari Jamanatidavana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Baldava Girivara Jani Gopi Jana Baldava Girivara Jani Jasodanandana Prajujanandana Jasodanandana Prajujanandana Jamanatidavana Chari Jamanatidavana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Harivargatarja Asvatara Satasti Srimadi Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Chita Prabhupada Anatta Kunti Vaishnavindaki Gaur Premanandi. Welcome to the Sunday Feast class. Sir. And this weekend, for those of you that haven't been with us earlier, this is a weekend that's focused on and dedicated to taking shelter of the holy name. Yesterday morning and evening, and again this morning, and now that's the theme. Our main activity, the primary means for deliverance for this age, according to the Vedic literature, is taking shelter of the holy name. Celebrated verse, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam Kalo, Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatir Anvita. In this Kalo, in this age of Kali, this is the primary means. And not only in Vedic culture, it turns out the religions of the world have great emphasis, if not singular emphasis, on the holy name of God. So we've been discussing so far the first 2 of the 8 verses, or Shiksha, instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and how to best take shelter of the holy name. And this is text number 3, verse number 3. In the Sikshastaka 1, the message is there's 7 identified excellences or glories or majesties or outstanding virtues of the holy name that sequentially, one after the next, take one further and further and further towards the goal of love of God. And then the second Sikshastaka verse gives further inspirations, just summarized briefly. Nam Nam Akari Bahuda. There's unlimited names, and each and every one of those names, Nija Sarva Shaktis, his own potencies are in full invested within those names. There is no hard and fast rules, unlike Vedic sacrifices and other procedures. They have very strict rules that must be observed. And with chanting of the holy name, there's no such strict set of rules, niyamas. And the approach is made very easy. There's no easier approach to the absolute truth than through his name, because we can all make sounds with our voices. So to make the sound Krishna is quite simple. He's made approach to him very easy. But Durdaivam Idarsha Mahajani Nanaraga. Unfortunately, I don't have attachment or attraction for these holy names. So this Sikshastaka 3 is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's GPS, how to get to the stage where there's some attraction. And the final line, Kirtaniya Sadahari, when those four things are achieved, one can chant the holy name constantly, Sada. Kirtaniya Sada. So there's a recording that I'm going to play just momentarily of Srila Prabhupada singing some recording of this verse, and I hope it works. He puts his whole heart into it. One more time. So there's 4 parts, and we're going to go through these 4 parts 4 times from different perspectives. The first part is humility. The second part is tolerance or forbearance. The third part is not expecting respect from others, but offering all respect to others. Kirtaniya Sadahari. These are qualifications that help one move towards the position of taste for the name or attraction for the name. According to Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 12, we find this verse where it's explained the different procedures or emphasis given in the 4 different yugas for achieving spiritual perfection. In Krita Yuga, we commonly say Satya Yuga, but Krita Yuga is another term. Dhyayate Vishnu, meditation on Vishnu, is that process for the first of the 4 yugas. And in Treta Yuga, Yagya, the performance of sacrifice. And in Dvapara Yuga, the serving of the Lord's lotus feet, specifically in his deity form, the Archa form. And Kalau, in this age of Kali, Hari Kirtana, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This is the best means to achieve the goal of life in this age. So this particular verse, Trinadapi Sudeshena, Lord Chaitanya spoke it several times directly in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in one case, he said, "Raising my hands, I declare, everyone please hear me. String this verse on the thread of the holy name and wear it on your neck for continuous remembrance. It's so important. So when you wear something around your neck for continuous remembrance, it may also be like this illustration here, like a necklace or an ornament. It's the ornament of a Vaishnav: humility, tolerance, not wishing to receive respect from others, but offering all respect. So here's going through those 4 points the first time. An elderly lady was so completely enthusiastic. She was just ignoring, she was oblivious to what she was doing. She stood on Lord Chaitanya's shoulders to have darshan of the deity. And when his assistant Govinda saw this, he was shocked and was telling the lady, "Get down, what are you doing?" And Lord Chaitanya came to his external senses and saw what Govinda was doing and said, "No, no, no. If only I had such enthusiasm as this lady, then my life would become perfect." When the lady realized what she was also just completely overwhelmed in ecstatic love for Lord Jagannath, and she became very embarrassed what she had just done, got down. But Lord Chaitanya was in all humility, not being troubled by the lady climbing at his shoulders, but appreciating her enthusiasm. And in the right, we see Lord Chaitanya being greeted by Sanatana Goswami, who we see him holding a straw in his teeth as a display of his humility, grasping the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and submitting to him. So lower than a blade of grass or piece of straw. This is a close-up photograph of Krishna Balaram, and maybe some of you have had darshan. Very near to the palace of Nanda Maharaj, there's a grove of Kadamba trees called Ter Kadamba. And the deity that's worshipped in that grove of Kadamba trees is this Krishna Balaram deity that is said that it was worshipped by Rupa Goswami, and continuing after Rupa Goswami's time, others worship this deity. And if you look closely on the altar, written in Sanskrit, is a verse written by a very beloved follower of Rupa Goswami named Raghunath Das Goswami. He was a contemporary, but he considered himself to be Rupa Goswami's follower. And in Sanskrit, it's written here, Adadanas Chanan Dantire Idam Yache Punak Punak Shriman Rupa Padambojo Rajo Hum Syam Bave Bave. There's this trend again, Adadanas Chanam Dantire. Taking a blade of grass between my teeth, I, Raghunath Das, repeatedly beg that birth after birth I may obtain the dust of Srila Rupa Goswami's lotus feet. Raja, the dust from his feet, Srimad Rupa Padam Oja Raja. Now the Raghunath Das Goswami, amongst our acharyas, he's very much revered. There are stages of bhakti, and the final ultimate stage is prema prayojana, and Raghunath Das is the proponent or the emblem or the teacher of that ultimate stage, prema prayojana. And he's holding the lotus feet of Raghunath Rupa Goswami, wishing to have dust, birth after birth, in this blade of grass between my teeth mood, in this kind of humility. So it's a celebrated verse, and it's a nice position to take. Humility certainly before Rupa Goswami, and achieve the dust of his lotus feet. On the painting on the right, that's King Prataparudra, the king of the land, and in Orissa at the time was even much greater than the current Orissa. But he took the position of a menial sweeper before Lord Jagannath when he was coming from the temple to get onto the cart. And on our left, this is a pilgrim doing what some pilgrims do. They do Dandavat Parikrama around Govardhan Hill. And in front of him is a pile of 108 stones. So the procedure is the pilgrim pays obeisances 108 times. Each time he pays obeisances from where his feet are standing back there, he would take one stone and place it with his outstretched hands in the pile of stones. And then 108 times before all the stones were moved, and then he would go to where the stones were piled up and then do that again, go all the way around Govardhan Hill like that. It's pretty austere. I know one devotee who was a teacher in Gurukul in Vrindavan, and he didn't do Dandavat Parikrama around Govardhan Hill, but he did around Braja. There's a Parikrama path around Braja. And he said his knees became bloody. He had to wear knee pads. And it took several weeks, certain number of hours each day doing the Dandavat Parikrama. I know one family in India from Bombay, the whole family, every Purnima, they go to Braja, and with one stone, they do Dandavat Parikrama around the whole Govardhan Hill. It takes the entire day. To walk, it takes about 6 hours. That's if you're moving at a good pace. It must take them more than one day. It must take them 2 days. So it's besides it's a good yoga asana. It helps one to feel humble before the worshipable Govardhan or the worshipable Lord Jagannath or the worshipable Supreme Lord. So that's humility. Now here's some examples of tolerance. Toror indicates the tree as more tolerant than the tree. The painting on the left is a painting of Raghunath Das by the side of Radha Kund, and behind him is Radharani, and behind Radharani is Sanatana Goswami. And the story that goes along with the painting goes like this. Raghunath Das had very strong vrata or vow of chanting every day, and he would complete his chanting no matter what, and he was in such an absorbed state of consciousness when chanting that he would lose external consciousness. So one time in the heat of the summer, now here in Houston it's pretty hot and humid as well. Before being here, I was in Phoenix and it was hot and dry. It didn't feel the same. Here it's hot and humid. So And Vrindavan is also very dry, but his body was blistering. It was the midday sun, and he was just absorbed in chanting, he was oblivious. So Radharani saw what he was doing, so she came and held her upper garment to shade him. And as she was shading Raghunath, she was perspiring, and you see that stream of her perspiration drizzling into the Radhakund lake. And when the midday sun was completed, she withdrew her garment and left. In the background, Raghunath saw the whole thing. And he chastised, Sanatana Goswami chastised Raghunath. And what are you doing? You're here to worship Radharani. Now you're making Radharani do some service for you because you're so austere. Please, please, I instruct you, build a bhajan kutir so she doesn't have to come and do service for you. But very tolerant of, in this case, heat. Down on the right side, that's, of course, Prahlad being tormented by Hiranyakashipu's buddies, his assistants. They don't look like nice fellows. And serpents, a whole pit of snakes tormenting him. But he was a picture of tolerance in his case, because just his mind was absorbed in thought of Krishna and feeling protection of Krishna. That helps one to feel tolerant if you feel the Lord is protecting you. Prabhupada explains in this regard, there may be so many impediments for a person who is chanting Hare Krishna. Nonetheless, tolerating all these impediments, one should continue to chant so that at the end of one's life, one can have the full benefit of Krishna consciousness. So humility, tolerance, amanina. Amanina is not expecting any respect. The scene here is Lord Nityananda wearing the garland and wearing the blue dhoti. He was hit in the head with a clay pot shown over there on the table. The two ruffians, Jai and Vijay, who had become fallen personalities, they threw a clay pot and hit Nityananda in the head. And Lord Chaitanya, hearing that Lord Nityananda was hit, he came. This doesn't show in the picture, but Lord Chaitanya has Sudarshan chakra raised, ready to chop off their heads. And Lord Nityananda protested, because his interest was just simply that they, Jaghai and Madhai, would chant the holy name. So when trying to encourage people to chant the holy name, you're not necessarily going to get a good response. You're not necessarily going to get a pot in the head, but without expecting any respect, to do good for others. This is the amanina. The painting on the left, that's Durvasa Muni in the foreground. In the background is Maharaj Ambarish, and becoming angry at Maharaj Ambarish, he took some hair, piece of hair from his head, and with mantra dashed it to the ground, and by mantra created a fiery demon pointing at Maharaj Ambarish, saying, "Kill him." And Maharaj Ambarish is not trying to defend himself or anything. He's just being very tolerant and not expecting respect, although he's worthy of respect. And in the lower right-hand side here, this is Prabhupada in Delhi, where he is a sannyasi living in Vrindavan, writing his Back to Godhead magazine. He would go from place to place. This is a tea stall, because he said he would do like that. So that's what the painting is illustrating. Persuading some gentlemen to take seriously the message of bhakti, recorded in his Back to Godhead magazine. And, they weren't always gentle. They were sometimes ruffians, or not so fully respectful. But without expecting respect in return, he was offering the very best thing to each of them. And the fourth one, manadena, offering respect to others. On the right-hand side, this is a depiction of one of the disciples, Shyamananda, being depicted here, who came to take shelter of Jiva Goswami to learn the scriptures from him in Vrindavan, sent by his spiritual master, Hridaya Chaitanya. And on the left, it's a king who is offering respect to the lotus feet of Narada Muni as is proper, ready to offer all respect to others, certainly worshipable others, but even others, because others have a spirit soul within them. I shared this in one of the home gatherings. I'm staying in the sannyas quarters, and I have 2 roommates. There are 2 little tiny spiders on the windowsill, and I see them every day multiple times, and we say Haribol to one another. I'll miss them. I don't know if they're going to miss me. I think they like it better if they don't have a 3rd roommate, but we offer respect even to spiders. Like Magari, the hunter, he was offering respect to the ants. And we offer respect to all living entities. Now, there are certainly people in this world that don't understand that principle, but those who wish to go further and get a taste, an attraction for the holy name, this principle is very important. There's a little boy helping an elder walk along a path, offering respects to others, or up the upper right side. It's not necessarily depicting any particular sadhu, but it's a principle of respecting elderly, respecting the brahmanas, respecting others, especially, proportionate to the respectability or the position of others. We offer commensurate respect in appropriate manner. And of course, cows are to be respected. Here's Magari. Magari previously was a hunter who was converted to a Vaishnav by the grace of Narada Muni. Sometime later, when Narada came to visit him with one of his friends, another sadhu, Magari saw them coming, and he was running to come visit them, but he stopped and took his upper garment to move the ants to the side because he didn't want to step on an ant. So that's the nature of a Vaishnava. They're compassionate and offering respect to others. Prabhupada told the story about an uncle who was a cloth merchant. And the cloth merchant uncle had a practice that in the evening, when he closed shop, he would leave some rice and some milk. Now, this isn't from his uncle's shop, but it's just illustrating when it's right in Prabhupada's purport, Canto 7, Chapter 14. One should treat even animals like deer, camels, asses, monkeys, mice, snakes, and birds exactly like one's children. Of course, you may have to be a little careful with snakes and maybe also mice, and you don't keep camels and asses and monkeys in your living room. But they're treated with some respect. Prabhupada's comment with his uncle was it was very practical. Besides being compassionate to the mice or rats, they were living entities also, and they had the right to have something. And if he didn't do what he did, they would eat it. He was a cloth merchant. They would eat through the sacks and destroy the cloth, make holes in the cloth. So it was very practical and very compassionate at the same time. On the right-hand side, another pastime. This is seated with a bead bag there. That's Haridas Thakur. And during part of Haridas Thakur's life, he was living in a place in the district of Nadia, near Mayapur, known as Pulia. So that Pulia is still there. You can visit the same place, where at that time at least, the Ganges flowed by where Haridas was staying. There was a cave. Wasn't necessarily such a large cave, but the painting shows a very large cave, where he would make his home. And the sadhus, or the persons that respected Haridas, would come to see him, but they found it a little difficult because there was vapors in the air that made their eyes sting because there was a poisonous snake. And so they requested Haridas permission to remove the snake. And Haridas said, well, the snake doesn't bother me, but if you are bothered, then I can get up and leave. And as he made that statement, then the snake slithered out of the cave. Super soul within the heart of the snake. So he was being respectful to the snake, even snake and mice, as the picture shows, as Prabhupada's teaching us. Now these are very high standards, but the principle is a natural principle for one who wants to develop a taste for the name, having respect for other living entities. There again is Ambarish, who is not being disturbed by the offense made by Durvasa Muni. But over here on the right, when Durvasa Muni came back after visiting Vishnu and saying, you have to get freed from this difficulty of the Sudarshan Chakra by falling at the feet of Maharaj Ambarish. So that is what he did. And Maharaj Ambarish is offering his prayers to the Sudarshan Chakra to please receive from me the fruits of all of my past pious activities, pass them on to Durvasa Muni, and please give this man relief. So the Sudarshan Chakra stopped and disappeared. Just on Ambarish Maharaj's say so. So he remained undisturbed even when in difficulty. And in such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Certainly that's was demonstrated by our founder Acharya. And this image here, this is Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who departed this world with a cancer condition. And this is as his body is shriveling and shrinking and becoming smaller and smaller due to his difficulty. And you can see the tears coming from his eyes as he's hearing the kirtan. Who knows how much pain the body was in, but he was just immersed in the kirtan. So now we'll go through them again. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. And this is another painting of the same episode, Sanatana Goswami approaching Lord Chaitanya with straw in his mouth. I am a blank slate. I do not even know who I am. Please instruct me. Now, Sanatana Goswami certainly knew who he was and was a celebrated, learned person. He was a Saraswat Brahmin by birth, and he was fluent in 7 languages. He was previously living as the Prime Minister of Nawab Hussain Shah. He was a celebrated personality, but he's coming before Lord Chaitanya with this abject humility, saying, people say I'm a learned person, but it's not true. And I'm such a fool, I think, yes, I'm a learned person. But here's the fact, I don't even know who I am. So please instruct me. More tolerant than a tree. This is a painting of the condemnation that came to Haridas Thakur, pictured here, where the constables were ordered to beat him with sticks in the public marketplaces, one marketplace after the next marketplace. And you see at the bottom that local people were pleading with the constables, don't do like this. He's a saintly person. You can beat me, but don't beat him. It's terrible. And they continued and continued. They continued tolerating the abuse, praying to the personality of Godhead, please forgive these men. They don't know what they're doing. Devoid of all sense of false prestige, this is a painting of that same king who was sweeping before Lord Jagannath, King Prataparudra. And as a result of that humility and service to Lord Jagannath, Lord Chaitanya permitted him to massage his feet and offer verses from Srimad Bhagavatam for his delight. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya trained him in some verses. So the king, taking this humble position, became the recipient of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Ready to offer all respects to others, at the time of Haridas Thakur's departure from this world, after the placing of the body of Haridas in Samadhi, Lord Chaitanya personally begged for the articles of pictured down here in the lower right for making a big feast in honor of Haridas Thakur's departure, and then personally went with his large hands and distributed the cooked items to all the sadhus who were wanting to honor prasad at the time of Haridas Thakur's departure. So taking this humble position in the mode of a service to all the devotees, although he's the master of all the devotees, and they knew it. That was his mood. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. In the upper right, that's a painting of a prostitute sent by the local landholder, Zamindar, who wanted to see Haridas Thakur disgraced by falling down at the lurement of a prostitute. So she's making her best effort to attract Haridas's mind away from chanting, but no luck. He stayed fixed in the chanting of the holy name, and she became a devotee instead. Down here in the lower left, that's the Rath Yatra at Golden Gate Park in Los Angeles, a very celebrated event, and the painting or the photograph is also ecstatic kirtan. When Prabhupada raised his arms, the whole audience went nuts, jumping and dancing and leaping in the air, and ecstatic kirtan. Kirtaniya Sadahari. In the right-hand side, just a lady, mendicant, who's chanting the holy name and encouraging everyone she sees to also chant the holy name. Over here on our left, of course, is Grandfather Bhishma departing, but in his departure, just like him, Haridas also wanted to see the Supreme Lord directly upon his departure and call his name. And one who does like that, they go directly to the spiritual world. So a life of devotion and devotion to the holy name leads to that also. Let's see what happens here. Yeah. So again, this is Prataparudra. These are Prabhupada's words taken from his writings, directly using them to explain this Sikshastaka verse. These are the symptoms of one who chants the Hare Krishna mantra without offense. Even though exalted, he thinks himself very low. Like a tree, he tolerates everything in two ways. When the tree is cut down, it does not protest. Even when drying up, it doesn't ask anyone for water. Rather, the tree is always serving. It delivers fruits, flowers, and whatever else it possesses to anyone and everyone, including the woodpecker. A home or just, something to some insects crawling on it. So this is one painting that shows different persons gathering the fruits, climbing the tree, cutting the limbs, cutting the entire tree itself. And the tree is just there to serve. There's an American author that wrote a children's book on this topic, Shel Silverstein, called The Giving Tree. And I've shown it in so many different forms. It's a nice story. Nice story. Good lessons. A tree tolerates the scorching heat and torrents of rain. Winter and summer season, doesn't matter. The tree stands there and gives it shade in the heat of the summer, and some berries and some food for the birds in the winter, and just goes on serving and serving. So this is part of tolerance, is regardless of circumstance, we're servants of Krishna, and so we constitutionally serve Krishna regardless of circumstance. Circumstance doesn't create the service mood, it's the soul. The constitutional position of the soul, when oriented like that, one can chant the holy name constantly. Prabhupada's words, a devotee engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord practices forbearance, like that of a tree. Even if rebuked or chastised, he does not say anything to others to retaliate. This is a painting of Ramchandra Puri, who was a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, he was a godbrother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master was Ishwara Puri. And another of his godbrothers was Ramchandra Puri. And those two, Ishwara Puri, Ramchandra Puri, were disciples of Madhavendra Puri, his grand spiritual master. So there's this incident where Madhavendra Puri was reciting verses that were in the mood of separation from Krishna, in the mood of the gopis, separation from Krishna. Ramchandra Puri heard him speaking like this, praying like this, and crying in ecstasy. And he questioned him, challenged him. Why are you doing this? You should be reciting Vedanta Sutra and doing things that sannyasis are supposed to do. So Madhavendra Puri was scolded him and chastised him and said, you're an offender. You can just go anywhere you like, but I don't want to see your face again. I don't want to leave this world seeing an offensive person like you. You can go do whatever you like. And so he did. And the thing he liked doing was criticizing people. So one time, Ramchandra Puri was visiting Jagannath Puri, and he quickly came to know that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was residing there, so he wanted to find something to find fault with him. The painting shows he went to visit him in his humble abode and saw some ants on the floor. And anybody that has been to India knows there's ants all over the place. So he was pointing to the ants on the floor, just saying, just see, what kind of sannyasi are you? You're eating sweets. And the ants are coming to eat the particles of sweets from your droppings. And, this is, you're a bad sannyasi. And Lord Chaitanya didn't say anything. He didn't object. He didn't say, well, wait a minute. Those are just the ants that live around here. Just was very patient. The followers of Lord Chaitanya were very distressed to hear him being vilified like this or falsely accused. But they couldn't do anything because Lord Chaitanya was so tolerant, forbearant like a tree, always engaged in chanting. Now, we, in practical affairs of life, we may say something if someone makes some false accusation, we may not also. But it's not, if we do say something, it's not out of retaliation or get back or something like that. It's not done in that mood. Whatever actions or speech, we're not going to depart from the shelter of the personality of Godhead. In the upper right, that's Madhavendra Puri. That's the spiritual master of Ramchandra Puri. And the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master, Ishwara Puri. The painting shows the Paramahansa stage of Madhavendra Puri was, Prabhupada teaches that in the sannyas order, traditionally, there's 3 stages. Bahudak, Kutichak, Bahudak, 4. Paribrajakachari and Paramahansa. So it goes like this. After accepting sannyas, tradition is one would stay outside of the village in some forested area, and people would come to bring something to that person for his meal. Second stage, he would perform madhukari, go into the village to unknown people door to door and accept alms, and then go back to his little cottage. And then the third stage is he wouldn't stay in the cottage, he would just have no fixed residence and travel anywhere and do the same thing, madhukari anywhere he went, to different holy places, for example. And then the final stage is this one, the Paramahansa stage, which Madhavendra Puri was observing, is he wouldn't even do madhukari, he wouldn't ask anybody for anything, but if someone brought him something, then he would accept. So this is this topmost stage on the left side. A Vaishnav should not ask anything from anyone else. If someone gives him something without being asked, he should accept it. That's the topmost stage. But if nothing comes, a Vaishnav should be satisfied to eat whatever vegetables and fruits are easily available. The lower left side, that's the passing of Haridas Thakur, where he is about to leave his body at will, like Grandfather Bhishma left his body at will. His desire was, with his eyes seeing the face of Lord Chaitanya, to call out, the holy names of the Lord. So that's what happened. Lord Chaitanya gave him that benediction. The kirtan party is in the background, and Haridas Thakur left his body. In the course of passing life, he does not give anxiety to others, but rather does good to them while forgetting about his own happiness. This is Prabhupada at a printer in Delhi, where you saw the previous painting. He was going to tea stalls. He's now taking a look at the first run from the offset printing press of his books, or Back to Godhead magazine or whatever. And Prabhupada tells the story. The printer became his friend, and his printer said, "Why are you just printing magazine? People will, after reading it, throw it away. But if you printed hardcover books, then it would stay in people's homes and they would receive benefit over time." And Prabhupada considered what his advice was and decided to make this translation of Canto 1 Bhagavatam. Compliments of the printer's good advice. Practicing forgiveness like that of a tree and giving up violence towards other living beings, he protects and maintains them. The photo at the bottom, this is Prabhupada hitting a little tom-tom drum or bongo drum in Tompkins Square Park in New York, with different musicians in the background leading kirtan, in the midst of really uncultured people. But his mission was to give them culture, spiritual culture, and it was very effective. On the right-hand side is Prabhupada in his rooms at Radha Damodar, looking out of the courtyard where the samadhi of Rupa Goswami, samadhi and bhajan kutir of Rupa Goswami, contemplating this mission that was awaiting him, shown in the lower left, mission of giving the holy name to others. So just giving his life for the protection and well-being and happiness and upliftment of others. There was nothing else in his life. It was the order of his spiritual master, and carrying that out, he took it to his heart. Although a Vaishnava is the most exalted person, he is prideless and gives all respect to everyone, knowing everyone to be the resting place of Krishna. So respect, we showed the other photographs or paintings. We're giving respect to respectable persons or elderly persons and so forth. And here's a painting showing from Bhagavad Gita, since Krishna is in the heart of every living being, offering appropriate kinds of respect to all living beings. Natural Krishna conscious position. Krishna, the heart of every living being, is the resting place of Krishna, so we offer our respects to Krishna. That's what offering obeisances to the Vaishnavas is. We're offering to Supersoul within their heart. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. And finally, if one chants the holy name of the Lord in this manner, he will certainly awaken his dormant love for Krishna and Krishna's lotus feet. This is a painting that went on the cover of Easy Journey to Other Planets. That's the Easy Journey. Prabhupada wrote that book while he was still in India and published it, not with his cover picture, but it was at the time of the competition between Russia and America and who's going to get to the moon first, space travel. Prabhupada would often use the word Sputnik, which was the Russian terminology. He never used the Apollo aircraft, he just used Sputnik terminology. But so rather than just send a rocket ship to the moon, we can go beyond the moon into the spiritual world. Easy journey to other planets. and then finally the Hare Krishna mantra. So the purpose of going through this Sikshastaka 1, 2, and 3 is to take instructions from Lord Chaitanya how to more effectively take advantage of this very special gift that we've been given, the gift of the holy name, what it is, why it's important, and how to most effectively take advantage of that gift. These are different devotees have meditations that help them with their chanting. This is recommended by Lord Chaitanya. I mentioned it this morning and yesterday, so I have something to report to all of you. Rabindra Sarup Prabhu, a god brother who's now a GBC emeritus and living in upstate New York, one of the, if not the best writer in the Hare Krishna movement, very erudite person, is writing a book on Sikshastaka. And his health has not been good, so he kind of stopped, but he's now self getting better, starting to resume. He's going to participate with us in the Festival of the Holy Name, remotely, video, like we're doing, live stream, into the classes that we're conducting. And it's a 3-day event, the 4th of July holiday. This year, the July 4th comes on a Saturday. So the legal holiday is Friday, the July 3rd. So he's going to speak July 3rd and July 4th, because he already has another commitment on July 5th. So stay tuned to hear his presentation, highly learned presentation on Sikshastaka, which will probably come on Saturday. Probably. We'll see, either Saturday or Sunday, or for Friday or Saturday. And then others will be making other presentations similar on strengthening and improving our chanting. Bud Hari will be with us. Yay! And just today, this evening, the mayor of the city of Chicago has lifted the maximum number of people that can attend gatherings and places of worship from 10 to 50. And who knows, maybe by the end of June, it'll be a little more than 50. So we're going to have a little nice time together. And it's going to be broadcast like this is being broadcast. This is your invitation. Please join us if you can, remotely. You can come on up to Chicago if you want. If you come, you got to bring a mask. Let's see if there's some discussion. Or let's start with whoever's gathered here. Any questions or comments or something you'd like to discuss further? And it'll give time for the online people to send in their questions. Yes.
So these qualities, the humility and tolerance and respect, and also not expecting respect. We may not be at that stage to exhibit these qualities. We are still learning, we are still practicing.
Yes.
So, is it okay? If somebody tries to,
Cultivate
cultivate, but not only cultivate, but I mean, is it okay to kind of be extra, like I'm practicing humility, I'm revolve kind of thing, or is it you should not imitate that kind of thing?
Well, what's important is from the heart, not the behavior or the body language. But even if it's not fully there at the heart level, if the intention is not cosmetic, but the intention is genuine, so everything has to do with the sankalpa, the intention behind. If the intention is right, I may not be so humble, but if I'm trying to be humble, not just to win some praise, oh, you're so humble, Prabhu. Yes, I'm so humble. Or, oh no, I'm not humble, I'm the most fallen. You know, if it's just air, then it's not meat, there's no substance. But if it's, I don't have that quality fully, then it's a practice. It's helping to cultivate the quality in a deeper way. So the intention ultimately is to get closer to pleasing Krishna. The natural position is to be pleasing to Krishna. And Krishna doesn't like pride. So let me practice humility. Yes.
Guru Maharaj, these qualities, tolerance, humility, if you practice this in the corporate world, you may be treated as weak or not so
Weakly.
a weak person, like you're not.
Yeah, someone to take advantage of.
Yes, exactly. So how do we? I mean, we should have two personalities, one with devotees and one outside the world, or how should we balance it? Because if you practice something with devotees but not outside, or vice versa, how should we?
Well,
balance?
a lot depends on the individual, but there's, I forget the name of the person who's the author of a research book called From Good to Great. Does anybody here know that book, From Good to Great? The name is, you can look it up on your machine. So he was commissioned to do some research on Fortune 500 companies that were good and study them over some number of years. And some moved from good to great. And what were the factors? And one of the findings was when the CEO wasn't like this aggressive, the CEO, not just, person in the office, was remarkably humble and service-minded, these two things. It was compassion. The name?
Jim Collins.
Jim Collins. Collins?
Collins.
J.C. Collins. James Collins.
Yes.
James Collins. Excuse me. Okay. You know the person? You found it also. Okay. So I learned about this from a TED Talk somebody sent to me by a Chinese man who was Buddhist and an employee of Google. And Google had given him a full-time job to make Google better by teaching these principles. And principles of compassion, where humility is necessary before you're going to be compassionate, because not real humility, not real compassion if you're not really humble. So he refers to Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and shows the correlation between what his findings were. Where the CEO, my picture of the super excellent CEO is not the compassionate guy or the humble guy, but who knows what his benchmarks for humility were, but one of them was taking feedback. Because when there's somebody on top, we won't mention any names, but if somebody doesn't like what the top guy at the top, he just dismisses them and surrounds himself with yes men or yes ladies, as long as they say yes. And if they don't say yes, you're gone. So great is they can take feedback and correct themselves. I mean, that's a big deal in this current, the term that's being used is systemic racism. And the Black people, that our African American community in America, have been finding it hard to get through. But now it's starting to get through. It's like all over the world is starting to get through. But the problem is people can't hear. So it takes a humble person who can hear, and it takes strength, not just to like bark at people if they don't agree, but to take feedback. That's a great person. Then, so can you do that in the workplace? Well, it depends on the workplace. But at least in Google, they honor it. At least they teach it. Whether they live it is another thing. But they've given it. He says, "Look, I'm an engineer. I don't do any engineering. I just write curriculum for this model of being a compassionate leader, where you're humble and you're service-minded." Then he gave multiple examples in it. And he was saying, it's profitable for Google if we live in this ethic. So if you work for a company that doesn't understand the ethic, then you're the odd guy out. But on the other hand, you can be, this is my, back down to earth and with reality, you can be discriminating about which circumstances are you going to be humble and which ones are you going to speak out. Because you can speak out with humility. Like Prabhupada was humble, but he knew how to speak out. Or as we heard this morning and discussed it with Bhaktisiddhanta, he spoke with humility in such terms. At the same time, he was very strong. So when you're at the heart level, you're not in false ego. You're in service to Krishna. You know when to speak and when not to speak strongly. So when you speak strongly, it's not out of self-defense or posturing or something. It's a practical application given time, place, circumstance. But there is value in the workplace of being a person of character. Now, people don't get hired because they have good character. Commonly, you're hired because they can get stuff done. And people that get stuff done get hired. And the people that get stuff done know how to push people out of the way and get stuff done. It depends on the work environment. And different workplaces are different people, different organizations have different heads and different value system within that organization. So it depends. I know some devotees, they really like the work environment because the company values feedback and trying to get the best result. And this great is the result we want is to serve the public, not just and there's others that speak the same. Simon Sinek speaks the same. In the corporate world, the golden circle he calls it. There's another TED talk. That what's great is when people have a real interest in delivering something that's going to be of value to others. And that person is a leader. He takes the examples of computers, which computers really went to the best, not just the ones that said they had good marketing, but that the person at the head really wanted what was best for the persons he was trying to serve. Or Martin Luther King. There are many people that were involved in the civil rights movement, but he was outstanding, not because he was shot, but because he had a Shakti because his heart was invested in what he was doing. I had a dream, and etc. 100,000 people showed up overnight simply because Martin Luther King was going to speak. Anyway, there's power. The point I'm making is your particular work situation, I don't know, but there's power in principle. And these are principles. These are principles of chanting, but they're also principles of leadership. And moving your life and your ability to move the life of others from, you could say, from good to great, or from, from wherever we are to wherever we want to be. That's leadership. It takes a person of courage and conviction to become a leader. It doesn't happen overnight. Take this current situation. It's all over the place. Black people have been trying to say, and it's going to go. There'll be a wave of improvement, and then you kind of go back to where it was because people think they're in bodies. No way around it. So removal of ignorance is the real solution. And so now you're in the workplace where there's a lot of ignorance and passion. Now, how do you navigate that territory and not have a split life? Stay within the boundaries of your value system and make choices based on time, place, circumstance. Like when you're giving a class, this is just some practical examples. When Christ was giving his teachings, his audience was ruffians. So he didn't give the highest. He said, so many things I have to tell you cannot bear to hear. When you're speaking to children, you speak in language that children can understand. When you're speaking to teenagers, you speak in language teenagers can understand. Speaking to adults, you're speaking to educated people. Prabhupada did this all over the world. He spoke to the audience. So know your audience, and you don't depart from your values, but you choose, according to your audience, how to express your values and live your values. Don't depart from your values. So behavior modification, according to time, place, circumstance, is part of life. And have conviction in your values, and be really clear what your values are, and make your choices accordingly. It's easier said than done, but that's the principle. And if it gets to the point where people just, don't like it, or they're exploitative, you may need another work environment. It's like, I'm sorry to go off on this, but I'm very interested in the social change that's taking place in America and in turn around the world, and how different people are processing what their role is in this. And some people, they're really forgiving, and some persons are wishing to educate, and some persons are just angry. Some persons are exploitative of the mood and doing vandalism and, threatening and so forth and so on. Modes of nature. So how am I going to respond in the workplace to change? How can I be an agent of change? If it's just an impossible situation, you may need another field to make them change. So these people they can be respectful of values carried by an individual. easy. Kali Yoga. Anything else?
Kunti was praying to Kunti Maharani was praying to Krishna. That time I don't want next but in skin bondage. She was asking pray. She was praying to Krishna that time. When Krishna was leaving to Dwarka that time.
Yes, yes.
Then she was asking about that one. For us now, what we have to think. So she was around with Krishna. She was asking that much difficulty she faced in her life. Of how we have to face in our life.
Okay, I understand your question. Well, if you're on the level of Queen Kunti, then you can ask the same thing, and if you're not, you don't ask the same thing. What she really wanted was not difficulty. What she really wanted was Krishna's association. But she and the Pandavas, her sons, knew whenever there was difficulty, what would happen? Krishna would come. So if the price of Krishna's coming is difficulty, I'll take the difficulty. I'm ready to pay the price because what I really want is Krishna's association. So how should you translate her prayer? You pray to Krishna for his association or restoring your forgotten relationship with him. However he wants to do it. Please take me to you. Please take those things from my heart that are obstacles interfering with my relationship with you. I'm trying, but I need your help. Please bring me to you. Please remove the obstacles between the two of us that are in my heart. Like that. Because that's the same objective as Kunti is praying for. Is it clear? I'll embellish it. You ready?
Yeah.
In Brihat Bhagavatamrita, you heard that book? Yes? No? No.
Yeah, really no.
Okay. It's a sequel. It's a commentary on the Bhagavatam by Sanatana Goswami. So in part one, Narada is on a quest. He's searching for who is the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So in one chapter, he's referred to the Pandavas. So he goes to the Pandavas, and when he gets to Hastinapur, you know what they're doing? They're having a Pandava conference to discuss what should be our next calamity. Because we know when we have a calamity, Krishna will come. So what's the best next calamity? They weren't wanting calamity, they were wanting Krishna's association. But he had left Hastinapur and gone to Dwarka. That's the mood. That's their mood. But what's the purpose? The mercy of Krishna in the form of his association. Because they're already pure devotees. But he's over there in Dwarka. They have to stay and rule in Hastinapur. So we want his association. We want his unobstructed service with love and devotion. So please remove those obstacles. That's our prayer. Kindly help me. I'll make my best effort. You please also help me. Give your mercy. That's our prayer. You with me? Oh, okay. You're okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
So when we're trying to cultivate these qualities, one of the ones that I feel, at least like on a personal level, that I have trouble with is respect for others and not expecting any respect in return.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to fall into the mentality of I want recognition, or even like
You're human.
right.
You have to become a transcendentalist.
Get the question you get from the online.
Okay, the online people, the question is, of these qualities we just discussed, the one that I have the greatest difficulty with is not expecting something in return. When I offer respect to others, it's just to have this expectation, a little respect, a little acknowledgement, please. And when that doesn't come, I struggle with it. So how to get on the other side of that struggle is the question.
And then, just the
Second
second part of that,
part,
is like, how do we protect ourselves from also falling into the trap of like,
how do you protect yourself from
falling into the trap of
falling into which trap?
righteous indignation?
Which one?
Righteous indignation.
Righteous indignation.
Righteous indignation, like when you feel like.
Which kind of relation?
Righteous indignation.
Righteous
Entitlement.
indignation. Righteous indignation. When what happens?
When, you know, you may feel like you've been wronged by somebody.
Ah, that one, okay.
Right. And you're not, but it just kind of blocks you.
Okay. So those, they're not exactly connected. Righteous indignation is not just when somebody doesn't offer respect in return, but people just do, nasty stuff. And then they do nasty stuff, and then they do nasty stuff, and then do nasty stuff, and, it's after nasty stuff. And they do more nasty stuff, and they just keep, because that's it.
Yeah, like how do you recognize one when it happens? Because the mind plays so many tricks on you, right? Like sometimes it feels like you feel that you're right in whatever you were saying that you believe, but you might not realize how much you're hurting another person based.
When you become indignant, you start feeling righteous, and then you say and do things that hurt other people without even recognizing it. So that's that. You got 3 questions there. How do you live life according to your values? It's kind of like a question. And then things disturb. Well, do you remember the exercise that we had a handout sheet in January? Here's an exercise that will help you. And it's a matter of making choices that are in alignment with your values. Remember that iceberg thing? There's behaviors, there's values, and then there's the deepest held convictions. There's like an iceberg has the tip was below the surface of the water and the very bottom. So the tip is the behavior. That's what the behaviors. And then you want your behaviors to align with your values. It's a very simple exercise. And we want our values to align with what our deeply held convictions are, but may not be so clear what they are. But they're always there, and values may modify in time as we mature and so on. So the exercise goes like this. Journaling. You get out your daily journal, and you consider, and when you practice doing this, it becomes something that you're considered as you're in the midst of making the decisions, which is part of what your question is. But you practice in detached mode. There were the following 5, 6, 7 significant decisions I made today. Were they in alignment with my values, or were they not? And if they were not, what was the impetus to go over there instead of according to my values? And then I can check myself. Like I just had this discussion today with somebody when they had made some decisions that led to an uncomfortable circumstance in their life. And so where did I go wrong? We had some similar. So when you understand there's a tendency that I have a tendency to not be aligned with my values in this way, and it repeats itself for within your own choices, that's significant. That means I need to give some extra attention to this because it's a stone in my shoe and it hurts. I don't like the pain. I want to be able to walk without pain. So I see. As you catch yourself after the fact, it makes it a little bit easier to catch yourself in the moment. Because you see there's a tendency and you're already on this course correction, tendency-wise, to go off course. Because you know where you're going off course because you're monitoring. And it's really good if you can then have somebody who you're accountable to, you like a mentor or somebody, a friend or somebody that you like, this is an area that I'm recognizing. Here's my little, summary of the week. And then you just work on it. It doesn't just happen, it doesn't fall out of the sky. And so then the deeper one, the bottom part of the iceberg is Krishna should be pleased. And that gives strength. Then there's alignment with your values and with the deepest held convictions and your behaviors. And you become a better person because you're aligned with it's all more in accord. Now that's not the silver bullet, but it's an approach, a methodology that can help you. And supposing you do have somebody that you confide in as a friend or mentor or somebody, then they can know you and they can even just check in on you. How you doing? Oh, I stopped doing my journaling because whatever, I got distracted. Okay. You want to get back into it? What's important to you? You want to keep going with being out of connection with your values, or you want anyway? They can help you get back on course because sometimes we just get lax or distracted or something. That's sadhusanga principle. And somebody that can give us honest feedback, not just yes men, back patterns, but people who give us honest feedback, very valuable.
A second part to that point, how do you interact with devotees who are that way towards you? Or like how can you see?
He wants me to repeat the question because he can't hear you. What to speak to the online people. What do we do when
It's the opposite.
the opposite? We've been insensitive to others. Yes?
Yes.
Well, commonly when we're insensitive to others, we don't even know it. I call it our blind spots. That's what you're talking about?
No, I'm asking when it happens to you.
When what happens to you?
When somebody is insensitive towards you.
When someone's insensitive towards you, okay. Well, it depends. Sometimes you're just the tree and just tolerate it. Sometimes you're in that tolerant space and you ask yourself the question, what's the best way to assist this person besides just remaining tolerant? And there's options. One of the options, this is a lesson that I learned from Burjan. One of the lessons is, in some cases, it's just something between that person and Krishna, and let Krishna do what Krishna does. Don't try to take Krishna's role in doing something. But that's, your attention then goes to Krishna, Krishna being the one who's caring for this person. However Krishna wants to do that. But then there's a bunch of other options. At the right time, the right circumstance, when you're not, on edge, you invite some discussion. And the discussion can go like this. I take responsibility for my feelings. I'm not holding you responsible for my feelings. But I want you to know when this happened, this is what I felt. I'm blaming you. You can process that however you want to process it. I'm just letting you know when you said this is what I felt. And be ready for, whatever comes back. No, it wasn't like that. Or, gosh, I didn't know. I really, that's not what I intended. And whatever. Then it's called the relationship. And some people you just may not want to have a relationship with. So you just keep a distance from them. That's another option. And another is there's somebody that's an authority above that person. You go to that person who's the authority, but that does have the relationship and can speak to that person. And there's another option. You go to a village elder, is my language, or, an ombuds person, a mediator type person. Then the mediator type person, can I use your name? No, please don't use my name because it will come back and hit me. So anyway, you just think of options, but you're in this mode of goodness space rather than the victim space. If some misfortune is coming my way, there's karmically something involved in back there in my life. That's why this misfortune is coming. But it's an opportunity for service at the same time. And what's the best way to be of service? Then you can consider, because you're in the service mood, not the retaliation or hurt mood. Being in the victim consciousness, that's really disempowering. You forget, you forget who you are, you forget Krishna, if you get, all good things. It's not a good place.
Also, we need to analyze, is anything wrong with me if I'm honest?
Yeah, that's another one. Anyone that's been trained mediator, after they hear this party, if the door is open, they ask them, please consider what may have been going from your side to prompt the other person to do as they did. Maybe it's nothing, but it's good to look inside and ask yourself that question, because usually there is. Not always. Some people are just nasty. I can think of some people like that. Online.
Yes, there's a question from Chirag Prabhu. Should someone create a petition to all law enforcement agencies to mandate learning of Sikshastaka so that they become humble, tolerant, and respect everyone?
I nominate you. I'm sure you can word it very nicely too. Because it would have to be, what's it called? Non-partisan or non-denominational. It has to be principle-based. Because most likely there's similar teachings in other scriptures of the world. So, nice idea. Nice idea. I am sure. I'm confident, not sure. Confident there's going to be a lot of re-educating of police officers globally. And not largely in the Western countries at least. And some suggestions of what should be part of that. Because, Kshatriyas have to protect. So how do you be humble and protect? You have to be God conscious. You have to, anyway, so a very thoughtful, thoughtfully worded message. Maybe he can take this to our interfaith preachers and suggest this idea to interfaith preachers so they can come up with collective language that can go into the training, and then it remains non-denominational and principle-based. But I don't think you're going to get them to like say Sikshastaka ki jai. Here's a little memory bell just went on. One of the places I used to visit, I don't go anymore, was Memphis, Tennessee. And when I was visiting in Memphis, there was a group of Bengali doctors that came to the gatherings. And one of those persons I found out was not only an ardent follower of Shankaracharya, but he had also written his own translation and commentary on Bhagavad Gita, and he was sitting and listening to my bhakti classes. And then one day, we were sitting taking prasadam, and he recited Sikshastaka 3. Wanted to see my reaction. And I was like, wow, where'd you hear that? He said it was one of the favorite verses of Shankaracharya. Trinadapi Sudhichena. Now, how he took it, who knows, but it has its the point is, it has its universal application. It's maybe just Sikshastaka 3 has its universal application. But the punchline at the bottom is to chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. I don't know how far you're going to get in the secular government with that one.
This question is from Shashimukhi Mataji. She's asking, how can we apply these qualities in the workplace?
Ask Madhavacharya.
The next question is from Amol Prabhu. Does humility and tolerance develop as a result of regular attentive chanting?
Yes.
Or do we need to somehow develop it to be able to chant properly?
Well, when the desire to serve Krishna awakens, both things happen. Those qualities begin to awaken, and the desire to develop those qualities in a more refined manner also awakens to please Krishna. That's the service mode. To strengthen and improve our service capacity, we want to go deliberately cultivate. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Next question is from Saramata Prabhu. Is that Seva Mataji? Oh, okay. So Seva Priya Mataji. Harer Nam Eva Kevalam, but there are other religious practices or faith are also calling upon God. What is their result?
What is their result?
Yeah.
Depends on their consciousness. Yes, determines the result. We discussed that this morning. Go ahead.
Uttama Bhakta Prabhu. Since the time of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, there have been instances where devotees who like to chant more or most have been looked down upon as possibly lazy or lacking right mood of service. Is that a proper characterization?
No. We're all different. An example that comes to mind Krishnadas Babaji, a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta that had from childhood, and his early days in Gaudiya Math, had this absorption in the holy name. And when Bhaktisiddhanta came to visit the Math commander complained, this fellow, he doesn't do much service, he just chants. And Bhaktisiddhanta understood his character and his quality and said, if you can sit all day long every day and chant, then you can do that. But you need service, and he can do this chanting because that's his absorption. I mean, that wasn't his word verbatim, but that was. So so much depends on the individual. Service is the essence, and chanting is a service. But there's some persons that deliberately avoid service, saying with a big smile, "Gotta chant my round, Prabhu." There's some classic cases in ISKCON like that.
Next one is from him as well.
It's from whom?
Uttama Bhakta.
Uttama, okay.
Do humility and tolerance originate from the position of love? Once His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj said, one cannot preach without love.
Well, love is the mature stage, but the preliminary stage is wanting to be in service. So when that wanting to be in service matures, say in reverse, it becomes love. So even if one is not at the stage of love in the transcendental sense of Krishna prema, one can preach because it's properly if it's in the mood of service. Now there's some persons that preach and they don't have the mood of service, and that's not very palatable. It's not very moving to the heart either. But there are some people who do that.
Radhavalla Prabhu, examples of tolerance/humility is depicted by pure devotees internally, deep connected in spiritual practices. So sustained tolerance and humility can be exhibited by devotees strongly connected to those guiding them in their spiritual practices.
Sounds like a comment, not a question.
Yes, it sounds like a comment.
So when you read, can you project your voice this way instead of at your computer? Because I can't tell exactly what you're saying.
Examples of tolerance.
No, don't read it again. Is this the next one?
No, this is the same. So next question.
Next question.
Amara Mataji, sometimes I do some service with seemingly genuine intention, but sometimes it takes a completely unexpected turn. Does it mean there was flaw in intentions? How to understand if intention is pure and there is no underlying personal desire?
Well, you assume that there's always some underlying personal desire, but it doesn't mean if something goes wrong that your intention from the start was wrong. It can simply mean the time passed and the modes of nature moved this way and circumstances moved that way and you got distracted. So it doesn't necessarily mean your intentions are wrong. Just your conditioned soul, that's all.
Amol Prabhu, how can one come to the stage of simply serving the spiritual master and other devotees without expecting even acknowledgement, let alone hankering for appreciation? Is that an ideal state?
Yes, as you work towards it. That's that's Mount Everest. And you start at the base, go up. You work towards it.
No more question.
Okay.
If you encounter a person who is discriminating you, to what extent you need to be tolerant?
Well, the first response is tolerate. It's a mode of good. Let's just use this phrase, mode of goodness. Now, when you're tolerating in the mode of goodness, you may speak something. Excuse me, but you just stepped on my foot and it hurts. Tolerate doesn't mean you don't say you stepped on my foot, it hurts. You may say, it hurts. That's like this, this other answer. At the right time, you give feedback to the person. It can be at the moment, but many times in the moment, we're not in the mode of goodness. We're in some other mode besides goodness. So pause is good, and tolerate is a mode of goodness expression. But when you're tolerating, you may speak something in the right mood, in the right way, in the mood of service. But that's not intolerance, it's service. And so then comes this list of what are my options. You make a little, when you become practiced at it, it can happen very quickly. You have to, it can be later, or it could be, 3 minutes later, or half a day later, or, here are some of my options. You probably do, and we all kind of do it like that. Here's this difficult circumstance, and it hurts. Now, rather than be reactive, I want to be responsive. This is what we spoke about in the Dhruva Maharaj story, reactive versus responsive. Remember that? Yeah, same message. So then that's, response is from the place of tolerance. And now, what are my options? And one can be, say nothing. Just let it go. That's a possibility. Then there's others.
The question just came in from Prakash Narayan Govindan. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati chanted 9 years of 192 rounds in a day. What's our lesson from that?
Our lesson is, he was from another world. So whatever he says, sit straight and listen. Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhupada.